Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit exLutheran. It is an extremely long post, so bear with me here. It is one worth reading, and that is why I am doing it. The title reads, Jane's Story, Wells' Sexual Harassment. The post begins, written by, quote, Jane, unquote. When I accepted the executive assistant position at a contemporary Wells church, there were many things I expected, but sexual harassment was not one of them. In addition to the harassment, I witnessed my supervisor and, quote, spiritual leader, unquote, demean other women, including members of the church, that's in parentheses, drink on the job, plagiarize sermons, and act in the very manner you would not expect from a, quote, called servant of the Lord, unquote. I almost immediately observed the pastor's casualness, lack of boundaries, and what I perceived as downright laziness at times. His standards and expectations for my position as the assistant seemed to exceed his own standards as the pastor. Shortly after starting my position, I received a text message sometime after midnight from my supervisor telling me I should have sex with my husband. We never requested counseling or advice in this realm, so his inappropriateness was rather strange at best to us. We strived to take words and actions in the best possible way. I was subjected to many routine, quote, lapses in judgment, unquote, by my spiritual leader, including, this is bolded, an incident of him showing me a video that depicted nude male genitals while alone in his office. End bold. Is there ever a correct context for a supervisor to show anything like this to his married employee? Parentheses, I will discuss this more at another time. End parentheses. As he pushed the boundaries and inappropriateness, my conscience began to nag at me. Through even the darkest days, I allowed myself to believe that these behaviors were normal. Yet I began to feel torn between my loyalty to the church and the moral issues at hand. I spent many nights awake and hovered over my Bible in tears. There was something very wrong about what was going on at that church. I've seen it all firsthand and yet felt obligated to keep it all a secret. It was the kind of secret that absolutely tormented me, but I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. Parentheses, just another lie we are led to believe as victims. End parentheses. After months of utter frustration, the hostile work environment began to take a toll on me and my husband. I prayerfully considered if perhaps this was an unhealthy situation for me to be in. Bolded, so I gave my notice and was told to tell members of the congregation that I, quote, wasn't a good fit, unquote, when I left my position. It was unbearable to work with a man that continued to ignore, scream, belittle, degrade, and humiliate me. I left this job feeling worthless and far less confident than when I started, parentheses, which was previously at a Fortune 100 company. And bold. I suffered in silence while working at that church. I fell into a deep darkness from all that I experienced and witnessed there and its leadership. Shortly after I left the position, my depression began to spiral. We maintained membership at this, quote, relevant, unquote, church because of the relationships that we had formed with other Christians and did not want to neglect our spiritual life. The final straw was when an assault rifle was used as a sermon prop. We decided it was best to seek the counsel of a trusted pastor since the leadership at this church either outright condoned or failed to supervise its employees and their behavior. We were convicted to resolve all this in a Christ-centered way. Our hope was to see positive changes and healing for all. My husband and I have continued to fight an endless battle for justice in the Synod, and to see that this doesn't happen to someone else. We've patiently been in contact with top synod leaders. We've encountered roadblocks, never-ending circles, and have witnessed inconsistencies throughout the disciplinary processes within the synod. By the grace of God, we've encountered wonderful brothers and sisters in Christ to share in our burden. Unfortunately, we've also encountered timid leaders and those hesitant to publicly speak for the truth. People seem to selectively choose which commandments and passages to throw at you while ignoring others. The journey has been incredibly lonely and frustrating since we were asked to remain silent and be patient. We are exhausted and completely astonished that after everything was brought into the light, this man continues to be a pastor and council members. We will continue to persevere with others until positive changes are made in this synod so that all victims of abuse are protected rather than the perpetrators. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. In parentheses, Romans 5:3 ESV. End parentheses. This story spoke out to me because I believe I know what church he's talking about. I believe it's the core in Appleton, and it's now former Pastor James Skizuski, used to be known as Pastor Ski. I was a teenager when I began to attend the core. At the time, it felt more like a real church to me and to my friends that I went with than did our home churches. I never rose in leadership or took on any major responsibility. Occasionally I would be a welcome greeter, or I think I had offered at one point to do the offering, but there were a couple times coming to terms with some other past issues that later led me to not take on any major role or leadership position there. But the core is known as a real, relevant, and relational church. Probably the closest thing the Wells has to a real and relevant and relational church. I knew Pastor Ski and the Wells in general didn't mesh together very well. And because of my views at the time, I uncritically supported Pastor Ski with everything that he did and preached and would go about doing. And then the only thing I knew was that he had been kicked out of his position at the court and he was being transferred down to Texas. I would think I was 16 or 17 at the time that this happened. I had no idea why he was leaving until 10 years later, my husband mentioned what he had heard about Ski, about him using an assault rifle as a prop in a sermon. And I'll admit I didn't want to believe it, but after a bit of Googling, I came to a blog post. Not this blog post, but a different blog post. And I read through the descriptions there, and I didn't want to believe it, but all the evidence that he had linked from the court and from his own expulsion from the Wells made me realize that there was something disgusting being covered up by the Wells, and that it needed to be addressed. And that's how I found this sub. And that's why I'm reading Jane's story verbally, out loud, and for all to share, because it needs to be told. Where I uncritically supported a pastor and his church because I believed they were doing a right thing in way back when I was, a teenager. I first started going to it when I was 15, 16. Uncritically supported it. I would defend it, defend its practices. As much driven by the fact that I came from a church that had a bunch of issues, which is Bethlehem Lutheran in Hortonville, and those I will leave for another day, mostly because it would take me compiling a timeline and going back through every note and record that I have at hand to recap it. But coming from that, the core felt real to me, where the rest of the wells did not, and I'll be honest, still does not to this day. With enough evidence to show that not only this woman, but her husband, as well as other now former Lutherans, have experienced, there needs to be an upfront discussion about it. And these stories need to be brought to light. If you have any for me, I can be found at this channel, also as Reddit user Forever Swinging. I look forward to hear from you guys, as well as sharing my own stories in the future. Thank you.